20 years ago, in a penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor, Elena Kane stood in front of a bathroom mirror that cost more than most people's cars. Her hands trembled as she applied concealer to the bruise blooming across her cheekbone. The makeup was expensive, the kind that promised full coverage, but no amount of luxury cosmetics could hide the truth written in her eyes. She was 19 years old. She had been married for 8 months, and she was dying by degrees in a prison made of marble and gold. The phone in her hand felt heavy, impossibly heavy. She had dialed the number 3 times, already hanging up before it could ring. But this time, she let it connect. Marcus, her voice cracked on his name. Big brother, I need you. Please come. Across the city, in a grimy garage that smelled of motor oil and old coffee, Marcus Kane wiped his hands on a rag and felt his blood turn to ice. He had heard his sister cry before, when she skinned her knee at 7, when their mother died when she was 12. But this sound, this broken whisper, was different. This was the sound of someone drowning. I'm coming, Ellie. I'm coming right now. Hold on. He didn't hold on. He ran to his Harley, the bike he'd just finished rebuilding after his discharge from the Army Rangers. The engine roared to life, and Marcus Kane rode through Boston like a man possessed, weaving through traffic, ignoring red lights, his heart hammering a prayer he didn't know he remembered. Let me be in time. Let me be in time. Let me be in time. But the universe, he would learn, does not answer the prayers of desperate brothers. The scene he arrived at was chaos rendered in flashing blue and red. Police cars and ambulance, a crowd of neighbors in expensive pajamas, clutching expensive dogs. Yellow tape cordoning off the entrance to the building where his baby sister lived, with the man she had promised to love, honor, and obey. Marcus abandoned his bike in the middle of the street and ran. A police officer stepped in front of him, hand raised. Sir, you need to stay back. This is an active scene. My sister, Elena Kane, she called me. Where is she? The officer's face changed, sympathy, flooding features, too young to have seen what he must have seen. Sir, I'm sorry. There's been an incident. A woman matching that description fell from a balcony on the 12th floor. She didn't survive the fall. The world tilted. Marcus heard the words, understood them on some distant intellectual level, but they didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. He had just talked to her. She was waiting for him. He was supposed to save her. No, the word came out strangled. No, I need to see her. Sir, but... Marcus pushed past him, running toward the building. More officers grabbed him, and he fought them, wild with grief and rage. It took 4 of them to restrain him, to force him to his knees on the cold pavement while he howled his sister's name into the uncaring night. Later, much later, he would identify her body at the morgue. Later still, he would sit in a police interview room across from the man she had married. Bradford Hayes, 29 years old, Harvard Law School graduate associate at one of Boston's most prestigious firms. Handsome, articulate, devastated. She had been struggling, Bradford said, his voice thick with manufactured grief. Depression. I tried to get her help, but she refused. I loved her so much. I can't believe she's gone. Marcus lunged across the table, his hands finding Bradford's throat before the detectives could react. They pulled him off, slammed him against the wall, cuffed him, while Bradford coughed and gasped and played the victim one more time. He killed her, Marcus roared. I don't care what it looked like. He killed her. Check his hands. Check his goddamn hands. But Bradford's hands were clean. His expensive lawyer arrived within the hour. Marcus was charged with assault. He spent 48 hours in a cell, and when he got out, Bradford Hayes had already left Boston, transferred to the San Francisco office, beyond reach, beyond justice. The funeral was small. Elena's friends from college were there, crying softly. Bradford sent an enormous floral arrangement with a card that read, My beloved wife, forever in my heart. Marcus stood at the graveside long after everyone else had left. The tattoo artist came to him that evening, worked by lamplight in the garage, inking Elena's name over his heart in script that looked like her handwriting. While the needle buzzed and the pain bloomed across his chest, Marcus made a promise. Never again. Never again would he stand helpless while someone was destroyed by a monster in a suit. Never again would he arrive too late. He couldn't know that 20 years later, a sunny California morning would give him the chance to keep that promise. The present day arrived with the kind of relentless sunshine that California specializes in. Marcus Kane, now 48, president of the Los Saints Charter of the Hells Angels, woke at dawn in the small room behind the clubhouse that served as his quarters. The first thing he did, as he had every morning for 2 decades, was look at the photo on his nightstand. Elena at 17, grinning at the camera, her whole life ahead of her. Marcus at 27, arm around her shoulders, his younger self not yet acquainted with the particular flavor of grief that never quite fades. "Morning, Ellie," he said quietly, the ritual words. Then he stood dressed in jeans and a black t-shirt and went to make coffee strong enough to strip paint. The clubhouse was quiet at this hour. A few brothers were crashed on couches in the main room, sleeping off whatever had kept them up the night before. Marcus stepped over them carefully, carried his coffee outside to where the bikes waited in neat rows, chrome, gleaming in the early light. His Harley was fourth from the left, a 2020 Road King he'd customized himself. Black and chrome, powerful and loud, the kind of machine that made people nervous when it rumbled past. He ran a hand over the gas tank, feeling the familiar solidity of it. This life, the club, the brotherhood, it had saved him after Elena died. Given him purpose when purpose was the only thing standing between him and a bottle that never emptied. He'd worked his way up from prospect to full patch, to vice president, to president, earning respect through loyalty and a reputation for fair but uncompromising leadership. The Lost Saints didn't run drugs, didn't hurt civilians, didn't prey on the weak. They rode, they drank, they fought when fighting was necessary, and they lived by a code that had nothing to do with the law and everything to do with honor. Marcus finished his coffee and made a decision. The day was too beautiful to waste on club paperwork. He would ride, clear his head, maybe stop for cigarettes at that gas station off Route 66, the one with the decent coffee and the bored teenager working the counter. He swung his leg over the bike, settled his weight, and fired the engine. The rumble was a physical thing, a vibration in his bones, the sound of freedom. He didn't bother with a helmet. He wore his colors, the leather vest with the Lost Saints patch across the back, the smaller patches earned through years of loyalty. President, Army veteran. His road name Reaper stitched over his heart where Elena's name was tattooed underneath. The ride out of Riverside took him through industrial wasteland, slowly being reclaimed by ambitious developers, then into scrubland, dotted with the kind of businesses that survive on the margins, auto shops, cheap motels, truck stops. The highway opened up, and Marcus opened the throttle, letting the wind scream past, letting the noise drown out everything else. He almost didn't stop. He was pulling into the gas station, already thinking about whether he wanted Marlboros or Lucky Strikes when he heard it. A sound that cut through the engine rumble and the highway noise and went straight to some deep primal part of his brain that recognized the cry of something small and hurt and afraid. A child sobbing. Marcus killed the engine. The sudden silence felt heavy. And in that silence, he could hear the hiccuping gasps clearly now coming from the far side of the gas pumps. He should have kept riding. Should have buffeted. His smokes gotten back on the road, let someone else deal with whatever domestic drama was unfolding. He had learned long ago that getting involved in other people's problems usually ended badly. But his feet carried him forward anyway, leather boots crunching on the grit and gravel of the lot. And there sitting on the grimy curb was a little boy who couldn't have been more than 6. The kid's face was streaked with dirt and tears. His small hands were clenched into fists in his lap, and his shoulders shook with the force of his crying. He wore a polo shirt that was probably expensive and shorts that were probably designer, but none of that wealth could protect him from whatever had broken his heart. Marcus crouched down, the worn leather of his jeans creaking. The movement put him at eye level with the child, and he kept his voice low, gentle, in a way that would have surprised anyone who only knew him from club business. "Hey, little man, what's the trouble?" The boy didn't look up at first, just kept crying, lost in his misery. "You lose your mom," Marcus tried again. The boy shook his head violently. "You hurt," another head shake. Marcus waited. He wasn't good at this, had no practice with children, but he knew about pain, knew that sometimes you just had to let it run its course. Finally, the boy spoke, his words fragmented by sobs. "He threw it away." "Threw what away, kid?" "My birthday cake." The words came out in a rush, like confessing a catastrophic secret. "It was chocolate with blue frosting. My mom made it for me. It's my birthday today, and he threw it away because he hates chocolate." The specificity of the detail hit Marcus in the chest. Not just cake, chocolate with blue frosting. made by his mother, for his birthday, and some bastard had thrown it away. That's rough, Marcus said quietly. I'm sorry that happened. He said I'm weak, like my mom. The boy finally looked up and Marcus saw his eyes. They were bright blue, swimming with tears and filled with a misery too large for such a small frame. He said crying is for babies. Before Marcus could respond, before he could say that whoever he was deserved a beating, he became aware of movement. A woman was approaching from a silver sedan at the next pump, her steps quick and jerky, fear radiating from her in waves. She was beautiful in the way that breakable things are beautiful. Delicate features, auburn hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, wearing a sundress that probably cost as much as Marcus's bike payment. But it was her eyes that stopped him. Blue-green wide with terror, they were locked not on him, but on her son, and the expression in them was one Marcus recognized. The look of someone who knows the beating will be worse if she doesn't comply quickly enough. Tommy, sweetheart, come here. Now. Her voice was soft pleading. We need to go. The boy Tommy scrambled to his feet, immediately wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. The speed of his obedience, the automatic nature of it, told Marcus everything he needed to know. Then the man got out of the driver's side of the sedan, and the temperature of the entire scene dropped 10 degrees. He was tall, over 6 feet, dressed in a suit that screamed money. His hair was perfect, not a strand out of place despite the California heat. He moved with the kind of easy confidence that came from never having to face consequences, and when he smiled, it didn't reach his eyes. Those eyes were cold, dead. The eyes of something that looked human, but wasn't, not where it counted. Tommy, I won't ask again. His voice was smooth, controlled, but underneath it ran a current of steel that made the hairs on Marcus's arms stand up. Get in the car. Tommy flinched as if struck. Without another word, without even a goodbye glance at Marcus, the boy scurried toward the sedan, his small back rigid with fear. The woman who Marcus assumed was Tommy's mother wouldn't meet his gaze. Her hands shook as she fumbled with the gas cap, and now that he was looking, really looking, Marcus could see the faint yellowing bruise on her jaw that makeup didn't quite conceal. The way she held her left arm suggested ribs that hurt to breathe. The man, the husband, the father walked around the car with deliberate slowness. He grabbed the woman's arm, and even from 6 feet away, Marcus could see his fingers digging into her flesh, hard enough to leave new bruises. Margot, are you incompetent? His voice was quieter now, meant only for her, but Marcus heard it. Get in the car. You're making a scene. Margot. Her name was Margot. She bit her lip, didn't make a sound, just nodded and let herself be steered toward the passenger door. The man opened the back door and practically shoved Tommy inside, then turned his attention to Marcus for the first time. His gaze raked over Marcus, taking in the leather vest, the patches, the tattoos visible on his arms. His lip curled in a sneer of such pure contempt that it was almost impressive. Something I can help you with? He asked, his tone dripping condescension. Marcus slowly straightened to his full height, 6'3" of muscle and ink, and barely restrained violence. He pushed his sunglasses up his nose, his face an unreadable mask. No, he rumbled the word, a low threat wrapped in politeness. Not a thing. The man held his gaze for a beat longer, then laughed, a short barking sound devoid of humor. He got into the car, and the silver sedan peeled out of the gas station tires, squealing, leaving behind only the lingering scent of expensive cologne and cheap fear. Marcus stood there for a long moment, watching the car disappear down the highway. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, his jaw tight. The image of the woman's terrified eyes and the boy's tear-streaked face burned into his mind, overlaying with another image from 20 years ago. Elena standing in a doorway, bruises hidden under long sleeves telling him everything was fine. She was fine, he didn't need to worry. Marcus pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the contact for Grizz, his vice president. Then he stopped, took a breath. He couldn't go off half-cocked, not with something like this. He needed information. He needed a plan. He needed to know who that man was. Marcus walked into the gas station past the teenager at the counter and out the other side without buying cigarettes. The taste of ash was already in his mouth. He climbed back on his bike, but before he started the engine, he pulled out his phone again and snapped a photo of the pump where the sedan had been parked. The receipt printer was still spitting out a credit card slip. Marcus walked over, plucked it from the machine before the attendant could collect it. Victor Blackwell. The name was printed in neat letters across the top. Blackwell Real Estate Development Corporation. Marcus pocketed the receipt, memorizing the name. Victor Blackwell. He started his bike, but the ride back to the clubhouse wasn't about clearing his head anymore. It was about containing the rage that threatened to consume him, channeling it into something useful, something productive, something that would end with a little boy getting his birthday cake and a woman getting her freedom. The clubhouse came into view, the low warehouse building that had been home to the Lost Saints for the past 15 years. A dozen bikes were parked outside now, more brothers having shown up while Marcus was gone. He pulled in, killed the engine, and sat for a moment, centering himself. The moment he walked through the door, conversation stopped. They saw his face, read the storm in it, and knew. Something had happened. Something bad. Grizz detached himself from the bar, his massive bearded frame crossing the room in a few strides. "Reap, what is it?" Marcus didn't answer, just walked past him toward the chapel, the private room where serious club business was conducted. Over his shoulder, he called out one word. "Church!" The room filled quickly. 10 men, the core leadership of the Lost Saints, took their seats around the heavy oak table. The club's logo, a reaper riding a motorcycle with wings spread wide, was carved into the wood. These were men Marcus had bled with, ridden with, trusted with his life. Grizz, the vice president. 45, former Marine, built like a mountain and twice as immovable. He had a wife and 3 kids in a house on the respectable side of town, and he kept his club life and family life carefully separated. Bones, the secretary. 42, former Army medic, the club's designated humanitarian. He ran a free clinic out of a trailer on the property, patching up brothers who couldn't or wouldn't go to a hospital. Patch, 50 years old tech genius, former NSA contractor, who'd walked away when he realized what the agency was really doing with all that data. Pale thin rarely left his corner of the clubhouse where servers hummed and multiple monitors glowed. And 7 others, each with their own story, their own path to this brotherhood. Marcus stood at the head of the table, hands flat on the scarred wood. He told them everything. The gas station, the crying boy, the chocolate cake with blue frosting thrown away like garbage. The woman with terror in her eyes and bruises under her makeup. The man with his dead smile and expensive suit. Victor Blackwell. When he finished, there was silence. A few of the younger members exchanged uncertain glances. One of them, a prospect named Jimmy, who'd only been with the club 6 months, cleared his throat. "Reaper, I mean, it sounds bad, but it could just be a domestic thing. Rich guy's a dick to his wife. Happens every day." Marcus's gaze swung to him, and Jimmy physically recoiled. "You didn't see her eyes," Marcus said quietly, and the quiet was more terrifying than if he'd shouted. "I've seen that look before. It's the look of a trapped animal. It's the look of someone who knows that if they scream, the beating will be worse." He paused, let his gaze sweep the room, meeting each man's eyes in turn. "It's the same look my sister had, before she died." The temperature in the room dropped. Every man there knew the story of Elena Kane, knew that her death was the weight Marcus carried, the fuel for his unwavering code of justice. The uncertainty vanished, replaced by cold, unified resolve. This was no longer about a stranger's problem. This was about their code. This was about Elena. Grizz cracked his knuckles, the sound like rocks grinding together. "What's the play? Information first," Marcus said. "Patch, I need everything on Victor Blackwell. Where he lives, where he works, who he knows, what he eats for breakfast. I want to know every skeleton in his goddamn closet." Patch nodded, already pulling out his phone. "Grizz, I want eyes on his house. Quiet surveillance. I need to know the layout, security guard patterns, if he has them. Can you handle that?" "On it," Grizz rumbled. "Bones, start looking into domestic violence resources. Safe houses, legal aid, the works. When we move, she'll need somewhere to go that he can't find her." Bones made a note on a pad of paper. Marcus looked around the table one more time. "We do this smart. We do this quiet. We gather our intel, we make our plan, and when we move, it's fast and clean. No mistakes, no second chances." "What about the cops?" Jimmy asked, then immediately looked like he wished he hadn't. Marcus smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "The cops don't help women like her. Rich man with connections. They'll side with him every time. Tell her she's exaggerating. Suggest couples counseling. We've all seen how that plays out." He stood up straight, signaling the end of the meeting. Church is dismissed. Patch Grisbones stay. Everyone else keep this quiet. Not a word outside these walls. The room cleared, leaving just the four of them. Marcus pulled out the receipt he'd taken from the gas station, laid it on the table. Victor Blackwell, Blackwell Real Estate Development Corporation. He looked at Patch. Start there. Patch was already typing on his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. After a moment, he whistled low. Victor Blackwell, age 45, CEO and primary shareholder of Blackwell Real Estate. Net worth estimated at $500 million. Married 7 years to Margot Ashford, former art teacher. One son, Thomas, age 6. Thomas, Tommy, the boy crying about his birthday cake. Address, Grizz asked. Primary residence, 1247 Silver Pine Ridge Drive. That's up in the hills. Rich people territory. I know it, Grizz said grimly. Gated community, private security. Those houses are fortresses. Marcus absorbed this information, his mind already working through possibilities. Can you get up there tonight, just a drive-by, nothing that'll attract attention? Yeah, I'll take the van, blend in with the service vehicles. Good. Marcus turned to Bones. What can you tell me about getting someone out of an abusive situation? Bones leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Legally, she'd need to file for divorce, get a restraining order. But that takes time, and with a guy like this, he trailed off, shook his head. He'd fight it, hire expensive lawyers, drag it out. And in the meantime, she's still in that house with him. So legal channels are out, Marcus said flatly. I didn't say that. I'm saying they're slow. And if he's connected, if he has judges in his pocket or cops on his payroll, they might not work at all. Marcus had suspected as much. The law wasn't made for women like Margot Ashford. It was made for men like Victor Blackwell. Then we do it our way, he said quietly. We get her out. We make sure she and the boy are safe. And we make sure Victor Blackwell knows that there are consequences for hurting people. Patch looked up from his phone, his face pale in the glow of the screen. Reaper, I'm looking at this guy's background. Harvard Law School, though he didn't graduate. Dropped out his 3rd year. Before that, he was in a fraternity. Sigma Alpha something. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. What was the fraternity called? Sigma Alpha Brotherhood. Why sperm? Because Bradford Hayes, the man who married my sister, the man who killed her, was in the same goddamn fraternity. The room went silent. Patch's fingers flew over his phone screen, again pulling up records, cross-referencing data. When he spoke again, his voice was tight. Reaper, they were in it together, same pledge class. There's a photo here from 1998. Victor Blackwell and Bradford Hayes, arms around each other, big smiles. Marcus reached for the phone, looked at the photo. 2 young men, early 20s, dressed in Greek letters, holding beer bottles. They looked so normal, so harmless. Monsters never look like monsters, he thought. Not until it's too late. This isn't a coincidence, he said aloud. These men, they're connected. And I'd bet money they taught each other how to hurt women and get away with it. Grizz's face was grim. What are you thinking? I'm thinking this is bigger than one rescue. I'm thinking Victor Blackwell isn't just some rich asshole with a temper. He's part of something, and we're going to tear it all down. He stood up, grabbed his leather vest from where he'd hung it over the back of his chair. Grizz, do your recon. Patch, dig deeper into Blackwell's business. I want to know if he's dirty, and if so, how dirty. Bones, keep researching options for when we move. When? Bones asked. Not if. Marcus thought about Tommy's tear-streaked face, Margot's terrified eyes, Elena's broken body in the morgue. When, he confirmed. Tomorrow I'll ride past their house just to get a visual. Let them know we're around. Sometimes the first step to breaking a cage is letting the bird know someone's watching. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay in his small room, staring at the ceiling, Elena's photo on the nightstand beside him. At 2 in the morning, he gave up, got dressed, and went to his bike. The ride to Silver Pine Ridge took 40 minutes. The houses got progressively larger, the walls progressively higher as he climbed into the hills. By the time he reached the gated entrance to the community, he was in a different world. A world of manicured lawns and Spanish tile roofs and 3-car garages. A world where men like Victor Blackwell lived above consequences. Marcus rode slowly through the area, not stopping, not lingering, just observing. At one point, he passed 1247. Even in the darkness, he could see the outline of it, a massive modernist structure, all glass and steel, perched on the edge of a cliff, a palace, and inside it a prison. A light was on in a second-floor window. As Marcus rode past, he saw a silhouette move across it. Small, child-sized. Tommy unable to sleep, maybe thinking about his ruined birthday, maybe afraid of what tomorrow would bring. Marcus didn't stop, didn't wave, just filed the image away and kept riding. But he made a promise to that small shadow in the window. I see you. I'm coming. Hold on. The next morning, Patch called Marcus at 7 a.m. You need to come see this. Marcus found him in his corner of the clubhouse surrounded by monitors that glowed with data code images. Patch looked like he hadn't slept, his eyes red-rimmed, an energy drink graveyard littering his desk. What did you find? Everything. Patch pulled up a screen. Victor Blackwell's company is dirty as hell. He's got shell corporations in 3 different countries, offshore accounts in the Caymans. And look at this. He brought up a series of financial transactions highlighted in red. He's moving money that doesn't match any legitimate business deal. Large amounts, irregular intervals. My guess, money laundering. For who? That's where it gets interesting. Patch pulled up another screen. I found email exchanges between Blackwell and someone with the initials BH. They're careful, nothing explicit, but they're talking about shipments and deliveries and cleaning. And here's the kicker. One of the emails mentions a meeting next Saturday, some kind of charity gala downtown. Marcus leaned closer. Can you trace the BH emails? Working on it, but Reaper, there's more. Patch's voice dropped. I found a folder on his personal server. It's heavily encrypted, but I got in. It's called Insurance. He pulled up a directory of files, photos, documents, videos. What is it? Blackmail material, near as I can tell. Photos of women in various states of distress. Documents that look like NDAs. And Patch hesitated. There's a subfolder labeled Margot_compliance. The air left the room. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. Show me. Reaper, I don't think. Show me. Patch clicked on the folder. It opened to reveal hundreds of files dated over the past 7 years. Photos of Margot, bruised, bloodied. In some, she was crying. In others, she stared at the camera with dead eyes. In every single one, she looked like a woman who had given up hope. Marcus had to turn away, his chest-tight rage and grief warring inside him. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. He documented it. He documented hurting her. There's more, Patch said quietly. Video files. I haven't watched them, but don't. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. Don't put that in your head. Just make copies. Multiple copies. We'll need evidence. He forced himself to look at the screen again. What else is in this insurance folder? Files on other women, at least 4 others. Different names, different dates, but the same pattern. Photos ND, as what looks like settlement agreements. Marcus felt something cold and final settle in his bones. He's done this before, multiple times, and he's gotten away with it every time. Looks like it. Can you trace these women? Find out what happened to them? I can try. Marcus nodded slowly. Do it, and Patch, this stays between us for now. The others don't need to see this, not yet. He walked away from the screens, away from the evidence of Victor Blackwell's systematic cruelty, and stepped outside into the morning sun. The light felt harsh, unforgiving. He pulled out his phone and dialed Grizz. What did you find? Grizz's voice was grim. Place is a fortress. 12-foot walls, electric fence on top. I counted at least 4 guards on patrol last night, plus 2 at a stationary post by the main gate. Cameras everywhere. Motion sensors. The whole 9 yards. Security company. Private contractor. Ex-military by the look of them. This isn't rent-a-cop stuff, Reaper. These are professionals. Marcus absorbed this. Blind spots. Maybe there's a service entrance on the east side that sees less traffic. And I noticed the guard rotation has an 8-minute gap around 11 p.m. when the shifts change. But it's tight. We'd need to be fast and precise. We will be. Marcus looked up at the cloudless sky. Come back to the clubhouse. We need to start planning this for real. By noon, the core team was assembled in the chapel again. Patch had printed out everything he'd found, creating a dossier on Victor Blackwell that was 3 inches thick. Grizz had sketched the layout of the Silver Pine Ridge estate from memory, noting guard positions, camera placements, potential entry points. Marcus stood at the head of the table looking at the intelligence spread before him. Gentlemen, this is what we know. Victor Blackwell is a predator with money and connections. He's hurt multiple women, including his wife Margot, and possibly killed others. He's laundering money for unknown parties. And he has professional security protecting his compound. He paused, let that sink in. This isn't going to be easy. It's going to be dangerous. Some of us might get arrested. Some of us might get hurt. So I'm going to ask you now, before we go any further, are you in? Grizz didn't hesitate. In, Bones in, Patch in. One by one around the table, the answer was the same. In. Marcus felt a surge of pride of gratitude for these men who would follow him into hell if he asked. Then here's what we're going to do. He outlined the plan. The charity gala Patch had discovered would be their opportunity. Victor would be there playing the benevolent philanthropist with Margot on his arm like a trophy. Most of his security would be with him. That's when they'd hit the estate. A small team, fast and surgical. Get Margot and Tommy out. Get the evidence from Blackwell's servers. Disappear before anyone knew what happened. But Marcus said we need a diversion, something big enough to pull police attention away from Silver Pine Ridge, something that will make Victor sweat. Grizz leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his bearded face. Funeral procession. Marcus looked at him. Explain. In biker culture, a funeral procession is sacred. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of bikes riding slow through the streets. It's completely legal, but it's intimidating as hell. Stops traffic, makes noise, gets attention. And we just happened to route it past the hotel where the gala is being held, Bones said, catching on. Exactly. Grizz's smile widened. We let every charter within 200 miles know that the Lost Saints are calling in a debt. We gather an army. We ride right past that fancy hotel slow and loud, and we let Victor Blackwell know that we see him. Marcus considered it. It was audacious. It was perfect. How many bikes could you get? For you, Reaper, for something like this. Grizz pulled out his phone, started scrolling through contacts. Conservatively, 150, maybe more. 150 Harleys, 150 brothers unified in purpose. It would be a statement, a declaration of war. Do it, Marcus said. Send the call. Tell them the Lost Saints are riding for a fallen sister. It was the sacred phrase, the one that transcended charter boundaries and personal beefs. A fallen sister. It meant a woman in need, a woman in danger, a woman who needed the protection only the brotherhood could provide. Within an hour, the first responses started coming in. By nightfall, commitments from 8 different charters. By the next morning, the number had climbed to over 160. They would come from all over California, these men with their leather and steel, their loyalty, and their code. They would come because one of their own had called, and when a brother calls, you answered. No questions asked. While Marcus and his brothers were building their army, a different kind of preparation was happening inside the glass and steel prison on Silver Pine Ridge. Margot Ashford stood in her walk-in closet, a room the size of most people's bedrooms, surrounded by designer clothes she never wore and shoes she never walked in. Her hands were shaking as she reached into the back corner, into a ski boot she hadn't touched in 5 years. The burner phone was exactly where she'd hidden it, wrapped in plastic along with its charger. She pulled it out with trembling fingers, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. This was insane. This was dangerous. If Victor found out. But she couldn't keep living like this. Couldn't keep watching her son learn to flinch, learn to make himself small, learn all the terrible lessons that children of abuse absorb like poison. The man at the gas station, the biker with the kind eyes and the gentle voice, he had seen her, really seen her. Not the carefully constructed facade, not the smile she painted on for Victor's business associates, but her. The real her, trapped and terrified and desperate. And in that moment of being seen, something had shifted inside Margot. A spark, tiny but insistent, that whispered, what if there's a way out? She took the phone into the bathroom, locked the door, and plugged it into the outlet hidden inside the vanity. The charging light blinked on, and Margot sat on the cold marble floor, waiting, every nerve screaming that Victor would burst through the door any second. But he didn't. He was in his office on a conference call, his voice booming through the closed door about quarterly profits and market share. The phone took 2 hours to charge enough to turn on. 2 hours of Margot sitting on the bathroom floor jumping at every sound, her mind racing through possibilities and consequences. Finally, the screen lit up. No internet connection, no saved numbers, nothing. Just a blank phone, a tool without purpose. Margot thought about the library. It was 2 miles away through neighborhoods with security cameras and nosy homeowners who all knew Victor, who all thought he was such a nice man, such a pillar of the community. She couldn't risk it during the day, but at night. "Tommy," she called through the bathroom door, keeping her voice casual. "Can you come here for a second, sweetheart?" Her son appeared, his blue eyes curious. 6 years old, so small, so breakable. "Yeah, Mom. Do you remember that game you told me about, the secret way you found through the fence?" Tommy's face lit up. When he was 4, exploring the massive property while Victor was traveling, he'd found a spot where the bushes grew thick against the back fence. Behind them, hidden from view, was a gap where the fence didn't quite meet the ground. Big enough for a small boy to squeeze through. He'd never told his father. Some instinct, even at 4, had told him to keep secrets from the man who scared him. "You mean the tunnel?" Tommy whispered, making it sound like an adventure. "Yes, the tunnel. Could you show me tonight when Dad is asleep?" Tommy's smile faded, replaced by worry. "Are we running away?" Margot's heart broke. "No, baby, not yet. Mama just needs to do something important. Can you help me?" He nodded, solemn and brave. "Okay." That night at 2 in the morning, Margot and Tommy slipped through the dark house like ghosts. Victor was passed out in the master bedroom, drunk on scotch and self-satisfaction. The guards were focused on external threats, not on a woman and child moving through their own home. Tommy led her to the back corner of the property, to the thick stand of oleander bushes that Victor's landscaper kept meaning to trim. Behind them, just as Tommy had promised, was the gap. Too small for Margot, but she could widen it. She dug at the soft earth with her hands pushed at the chain link, created a space just large enough to squeeze through. Her sundress tore. Her hands got filthy. She didn't care. On the other side of the fence was wilderness, the undeveloped scrub land that ringed the wealthy enclave. And beyond that, freedom. They walked through the darkness, Margot carrying Tommy. When he got tired, both of them silent and scared and hopeful. The library was closed, of course, but it had free Wi-Fi that reached to the parking lot. Margot sat on a bench, Tommy curled against her side, and turned on the burner phone. Search for Hell's Angels, Riverside, California. Found the Lost Saints website. Found a contact page, a guest book that probably hadn't been checked in months. She stared at the blank form, her fingers hovering over the virtual keyboard. What could she say? "Help me, I'm being abused." Any crazy person could write that. "I saw you at the gas station." He probably didn't even remember. Then she thought about Tommy, about his birthday, about the cake that Victor had thrown away with such casual cruelty. The cake, that's what the biker had noticed. That's what had made him stop, made him care. She typed, "The cake was chocolate with blue frosting. He threw it away because he hates chocolate. Tommy is 6 today. We need the light. We're in the dark, please." Her thumb hovered over the submit button. This was it, the point of no return. If Victor found out, if this didn't work. Tommy squeezed her hand. "It's okay, Mama." The nice man had kind eyes. Margot pressed submit. They walked back through the darkness, squeezed back through the fence, crept back into the house. Margot hid the phone again, cleaned the dirt from under her fingernails, slipped back into bed beside her sleeping son, and waited. The next night at exactly 9 p.m., Margot heard it. A sound that started as a distant rumble like thunder on a clear night. It grew steadily louder, a deep thrumming that shook the windows in their frames. She ran to Tommy's room, looked out the window that faced the street below. And there they were, 20 motorcycles riding in perfect formation, moving slowly past the estate. Their headlights cut through the darkness like searchlights. The sound of their engines was a physical thing, a vibration that Margot felt in her bones. The lead bike, larger than the others, slowed as it passed beneath her window. The rider looked up. Even from this distance, even in the darkness, Margot knew it was him, the man from the gas station. He held her gaze for 3 seconds, then nodded once, a simple gesture that contained a universe of promise. Message received. We're coming. Margot pressed her hand against the glass, tears streaming down her face. Behind her, Tommy whispered, "They came, Mama. The nice men on motorcycles came." "Yes, baby," Margot whispered back. "They came." For the first time in 7 years, Margot Ashford dared to hope. The Lost Saints clubhouse had transformed into a war room. Over the next 3 days, brothers from 8 different charters arrived in waves, their bikes filling the parking lot until it looked like a chrome sea under the California sun. They came from Sacramento, from San Diego, from the Inland Empire and the Central Valley. They came because Marcus Reaper Kane had called, and his word carried weight across every charter in the state. By Thursday morning, the 167 men had gathered. They set up camps in the industrial yard behind the clubhouse grills, smoking with meat coolers filled with beer. But the atmosphere wasn't celebratory. It was focused, military. These men understood what they were being asked to do. Marcus stood on the loading dock, overlooking the assembled brotherhood, Grizz at his side. The morning sun cast long shadows across the sea of leather vests, each one bearing the colors of their charter, but all united under the same code. "Brothers," Marcus called out, his voice cutting through the low rumble of conversation. "Thank you for coming. I know some of you rode 10 hours to be here. I know you've left families, jobs, lives on hold. That means something." The men listened, silent and attentive. "I'm going to be straight with you about what we're doing here. There's a woman and a child trapped in a house up on Silver Pine Ridge. The man who owns that house is Victor Blackwell, CEO, philanthropist, pillar of the community. He's also a predator who's been hurting his wife for 7 years." Marcus paused, let that sink in. "Some of you know my story. You know about my sister Elena. You know that I was too late to save her from a man just like Victor Blackwell. I'm not going to be too late this time." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. On Saturday, Blackwell is hosting a charity gala downtown. He'll have his wife on his arm, playing the happy couple for the cameras. While he's doing that, we're going to ride a funeral procession, slow and legal, through the city streets right past his event. We're going to make noise. We're going to make him sweat. And while the whole city is watching us, Grizz added, stepping forward, a smaller team will be extracting the woman and child from the estate. Fast surgical professional. One of the visiting presidents, a man called Hammer from the Desert Ghost Charter, raised his hand. "What's the heat going to be like?" "Significant," Marcus admitted. "The funeral procession is legal, but cops won't like it. They'll escort us, try to move us along. That's fine. We're not looking for confrontation with law enforcement. We're just looking to be seen, to be heard." "And the extraction team," another voice called out. 8 men handpicked, in and out in 15 minutes. By the time anyone realizes what's happened, the woman and child will be safe." "Where?" Hammer asked. "Here, the clubhouse. We'll have legal representation standing by, domestic violence advocates of the works. Everything by the book once we have them out." Bones stepped up beside Marcus. "I've been in contact with a women's shelter in San Bernardino. They're prepared to take her and the boy if that's what she wants. We're giving her options, not making demands." The men nodded approvingly. This wasn't a kidnapping. This was a rescue. "One more thing," Marcus said, his voice dropping to something harder. "Victor Blackwell isn't just an abuser. He's connected to organized crime, money laundering, possibly worse. Our tech guy has evidence, and we're going to make sure it gets into the right hands. This isn't just about saving one woman. It's about taking down a network." That changed the energy in the yard. This wasn't just club business anymore. This was justice. "We ride Saturday at 6 p.m., Marcus concluded. "Until then, you're guests of the Lost Saints. Food, beer beds if you need them. But stay sharp, stay ready, and remember why we're here." He raised his fist in salute. As 167 men returned it, the gesture of brotherhood that transcended words. They would ride, and heaven help anyone who stood in their way. 15 miles away, in the glass and steel prison on Silver Pine Ridge, Margot was running out of time. Victor had noticed something. She could see it in the way he watched her, his cold blue eyes tracking her movements through the house. He hadn't said anything yet, but Margot knew that silence was often more dangerous than rage. It was Thursday afternoon. The gala was Saturday. 2 more days of walking on eggshells, of pretending everything was normal, of keeping Tommy quiet and invisible. She was in the kitchen preparing lunch that Victor probably wouldn't eat when she heard his footsteps behind her. Her entire body tensed. Margot. His voice was conversational, almost pleasant. Come to my office. It wasn't a request. She followed him through the house past the expensive art that she used to love and now couldn't bear to look at into his office with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley. Victor closed the door behind them and Margot's heart rate spiked. Sit, he commanded, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. She sat hands folded in her lap, eyes down. Submissive, compliant, the mask she'd worn for 7 years. Victor walked around his desk, perched on the edge of it, looking down at her. I had an interesting conversation with the security company this morning. Margot's blood went cold. They reported some unusual activity 3 nights ago. Motion sensors triggered in the back corner of the property around 2 a.m. They checked the cameras, but the angle was bad. Too many bushes. He tilted his head, studying her. Do you know anything about that? No, Margot said, keeping her voice steady. I was asleep. Were you? It wasn't a question. Victor stood, walked to the window, his back to her. You know what I think? I think you were trying to leave me. I think you took our son and tried to sneak out through the back fence. Victor, I would never. He spun and his hand caught her across the face before she saw it coming. The impact snapped her head to the side, stars exploding across her vision. She tasted blood. Don't lie to me, he hissed. I own you. I own this house, this life, that child. You have nothing without me. You are nothing without me. Margot pressed a hand to her stinging cheek, forced herself to meet his gaze. And for the first time in 7 years, she didn't flinch. You're right, she said quietly. I am nothing without you. That's exactly the problem. Victor's eyes narrowed. What did you say? I said you're right. Something was breaking open inside Margot, something that had been compressed and twisted for so long it had almost died. But the motorcycles riding past her window had watered it, given it light. You've made sure I'm nothing. No friends, no family, no identity outside of being your wife. Margot, but you made a mistake, Victor. She stood up, even though her knees were shaking. You didn't kill me, and as long as I'm still breathing, there's a chance I can become something again. For a moment, genuine surprise crossed his face. He'd expected tears, apologies, cowering submission. He'd never expected defiance. Then his expression hardened into something terrifying. You've lost your mind. I think you need to be reminded of your place. He grabbed her arm, started to drag her toward the door. Margot knew where they were going. The basement, the soundproofed room where he took her when the lessons needed to be private. She struggled, tried to pull away, and Victor backhanded her again, harder this time. She felt her head cracking against the hardwood floor. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Tommy scream, Daddy, stop hurting Mommy. Tommy had appeared in the doorway, his small face pale with terror, tears streaming down his cheeks. Victor released Margot, turned to his son with a look of contempt. Go to your room, Thomas. Now. No, Tommy's voice was shrill, breaking. You're mean. You're a mean daddy, and I hate you. The words hung in the air like a grenade. Victor went very still. When he spoke, his voice was ice. What did you say to me? Tommy took a step back, but he didn't run. I said I hate you. You hurt Mommy and you threw away my birthday cake and you're mean and I hate you. Victor moved toward his son and Margot saw his hands clench into fists. Something primal and protective exploded in her chest. She lunged between them, putting her body between Victor and Tommy. Don't you touch him, she said, her voice shaking but fierce. You can hurt me all you want, but you will not lay a hand on my son. Victor looked at her like she'd sprouted a second head. Your son, he's my son. My property. Just like you. No. Margot's voice strengthened. No, he's not. He's a human being. And I won't let you break him the way you broke me. For a long moment, they stood frozen in that tableau. Victor's face twisted with rage. Margot bloody but unbowed. Tommy small and terrified but brave. Then Victor smiled, and it was the most frightening thing Margot had ever seen. Fine, he said softly. Have it your way. Saturday at the gala, you will be the perfect wife. You will smile, you will charm, you will play your part. And when we get home, He leaned close, his breath hot on her ear. When we get home, I'm going to teach both of you a lesson you'll never forget. He straightened, adjusted his suit jacket, and walked out of the office like nothing had happened. Margot sank to her knees, pulling Tommy into her arms. They clung to each other, both shaking, both crying. And in her mind, one thought repeated like a prayer: Saturday. Hold on until Saturday. Friday arrived with unseasonable clouds, the sky gray and heavy, with the promise of rain that California desperately needed, but probably wouldn't get. Marcus woke early as he always did and found Patch already awake in his corner, hunched over his keyboards. Tell me you slept, Marcus said, though he knew the answer. Sleep is for people who don't have deadlines. Patch didn't look up, his fingers flying across the keys. I'm almost in. Blackwell's got his server locked down tight, but I found a vulnerability in the HVAC system controls. All these fancy smart houses, everything's networked. Hack the thermostat, hack the world. How long until you have full access? 6 hours, maybe less. Patch finally looked up, his eyes bloodshot. Reaper, I've been going through his email. This guy's connected to some seriously bad people. I found communications with a Mexican cartel, references to shipments coming across the border. He's not just laundering money, he's facilitating drug trafficking. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Evidence. Solid, encrypted emails, financial transactions, even some voice recordings he kept as insurance. If we can get this to the DEA, it's a slam dunk case. Then get it. Make copies, multiple backups. I want this bastard buried. Patch nodded, turned back to his screens. Marcus left him to his work and walked out into the yard, where brothers were beginning to stir, the smell of coffee and cigarettes mingling in the cool morning air. Grizz was already up doing push-ups in the gravel, his breath steaming. He finished his set, stood, nodded at Marcus. Morning, Prez? Ready for tonight's rehearsal? Tonight they would practice the funeral procession, work out the formation, the timing, the signals. 167 bikes moving as one required precision and discipline. Ready as I'll ever be. Marcus accepted the cup of coffee that Bones handed him, black and strong enough to strip paint. How's our extraction team looking? Good. I picked 7 guys plus me, all former military or law enforcement. They know how to move fast and quiet. Weapons, non-lethal only. Tasers, pepper spray, batons. We're not looking to kill anyone, just neutralize threats and get out. Marcus approved. This wasn't about violence for violence's sake. It was about justice, surgical and precise. What about the woman and kid? Bones asked. We have a plan for when they're out. Medical first. I want you to give both of them a full check document, any injuries. Then we have a trauma counselor standing by, plus a lawyer who specializes in domestic violence cases. And I want at least 2 brothers on guard duty at all times. If Blackwell figures out where they are, he won't get near them, Grizz rumbled. Not while we're breathing. The day passed in preparation. Patch finally cracked Blackwell's server at 2 p.m. Immediately began downloading everything. Grizz ran the extraction team through drills, timing their movements down to the second. Other brothers maintained bikes, checked equipment, went over the procession route one more time. And Marcus, for the first time in days, allowed himself to think about what came after. If they pulled this off, if they got Margot and Tommy out safely, if they brought down Victor Blackwell's empire, what then? The woman and child would need protection, support, time to heal. The club could provide that. But Marcus had learned long ago that you couldn't fix people. You could only give them the space and safety to fix themselves. He thought about Elena, about all the things he wished he'd said to her, all the ways he wished he'd helped. This wouldn't bring her back. Nothing would. But maybe, just maybe, it would quiet the weight he'd been carrying. Reaper. Patch's voice crackled over the radio. You need to see this. Now. Marcus found him surrounded by printouts, his face pale. What is it? I found something in Blackwell's deleted files. Something he tried to scrub, but didn't do a good enough job. Patch handed him a document. It's a police report from 5 years ago. Car accident, 2 fatalities. James and Patricia Ashford. Margot's parents. Marcus had seen their names in the background research. It was ruled an accident, Patch continued. Brake failure on a mountain road. But look at this. He pulled up another file. 3 weeks before the accident, Victor Blackwell hired a mechanic, paid him $5,000 in cash. The mechanic disappeared right after the accident, hasn't been seen since. Marcus felt ice settle in his stomach. He killed her parents. Can't prove it, not definitively, but the circumstantial evidence is damning. I think Margot's parents were trying to get her away from him, so he eliminated the problem. Jesus Christ. Marcus ran a hand over his face. This guy's a monster. It gets worse. Patch pulled up another file. Remember I said Blackwell had documentation on other women and I traced them. 4 women all married to wealthy men, all with documented abuse. 3 of them are dead. Suicide officially, the 4th disappeared. And Bradford Hayes, Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. Same pattern. At least 2 dead women connected to him. They taught each other Reaper. That fraternity, it was a hunting ground. They learned how to pick vulnerable women, how to isolate them, how to hurt them, and get away with it. Marcus felt a rage so pure it was almost transcendent. This wasn't just about Victor Blackwell anymore. This was about a network of predators who'd been operating with impunity for decades. Make sure every bit of this evidence is backed up, he said quietly. Multiple locations, cloud storage, physical drives, everything. When this goes down, I want to make sure these bastards can never hurt anyone again. That night, under the glow of streetlights, 167 motorcycles moved through the industrial district like a vast mechanical beast. They practiced formation, practiced the slow, deliberate pace of a funeral procession, practiced the discipline it would take to ride past Victor Blackwell's gala without breaking ranks and storming the building. Marcus led them, his road king at the point, Grizz and the other charter presidents flanking him. Behind them, wave after wave of brothers, their engines rumbling in perfect synchrony. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was a promise written in chrome and leather and barely restrained fury. Tomorrow they would ride for real, and Victor Blackwell's world would come crashing down. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, the gray clouds of the previous day burned away by California sun. In the Blackwell estate, Margot stood in front of her bathroom mirror, applying makeup to cover the bruises Victor had given her 2 days ago. The physical pain had faded to a dull ache, but something else had taken root in its place. Not hope exactly, but determination. She would get through this day. She would play her part at the gala. And then the men on motorcycles would come. She believed it with a faith that transcended logic. They had sent her a signal. They were coming. Mommy, Tommy appeared in the doorway dressed in the little suit Victor had bought him for occasions like this. He looked so small, so vulnerable. Do I have to go tonight? Margot knelt down, took his hands. Just for a little while, baby. And I need you to be very brave, okay? Very quiet and very good. Like a secret agent. She managed to smile. Exactly like a secret agent. Okay. Tommy's face was solemn. Mommy, after tonight, will we be safe? The question broke her heart. A 6-year-old shouldn't have to think about safety, shouldn't have to know that his own home was dangerous. Yes, sweetheart. After tonight, everything is going to be different. She hoped with every fiber of her being that it was true. Downstairs, Victor was in his element, barking orders at the catering staff, setting up for his pre-gala cocktail hour, checking his appearance in every reflective surface, radiating the confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. He looked at Margot when she descended the stairs, gave her a once-over like she was livestock, being evaluated. The red dress. Good, you almost look presentable. She swallowed the retort, kept her face neutral. Thank you. Remember what I told you. Smile. Be charming. Don't embarrass me. His hand closed around her wrist, squeezing until she gasped. Because if you do when we get home, I'm going to take Thomas into that basement with us. And I'm going to make sure he understands what happens to disobedient children. Margot's vision went red at the edges, but she forced herself to nod. I understand. Good girl. He released her smile, that dead smile. Now I have some business to attend to before we leave. Stay out of my way. He disappeared into his office, and Margot heard the lock click. She stood in the vast empty foyer of her prison. Tommy pressed against her side and counted the hours until 6 p.m. At the Lost Saints clubhouse, final preparations were underway. The extraction team assembled in the chapel, Grisbones, and 6 others all dressed in black tactical gear. They went over the plan one final time. Patch gets us in through the service entrance, Grizz said, pointing to the schematic on the table. He'll have already disabled the cameras and alarms. We clear the ground floor, neutralize any guards, non-lethal only, and make our way to the second floor where the bedrooms are. How many guards are we expecting? One of the team members, a man called Diesel, asked. 4, maybe 6. Blackwell will take his primary security detail to the gala, but he'll leave a skeleton crew at the house. What if the woman and kid aren't there? What if Blackwell took them to the gala? Then we abort and regroup, but intel suggests the boy isn't going. Too young for the event, and Blackwell won't risk the boy being alone. Bones spoke up. Once we have them, we extract through the same entrance. Patch will make sure the gate opens. We have 2 vehicles waiting, an ambulance and a van. The woman and child go in the ambulance with me for medical evaluation. The rest of you scatter different routes back here. Timeline: 15 minutes from breach to extraction. Any longer and we risk police response. Marcus entered the chapel and the men fell silent. He looked at each of them in turn, these brothers who were about to risk everything for 2 people they'd never met. Last chance to back out, he said quietly. No judgment, no shame. This is dangerous, and I won't order anyone to do it. No one moved, no one spoke. The answer was clear. Then let's bring them home. At 5 p.m., the Blackwell estate erupted into controlled chaos as Victor prepared to leave for the gala. 8 security guards in dark suits moved through the house conducting final sweeps. Margot, dressed in the blood-red gown Victor had selected, stood by the door with Tommy waiting. Victor descended the stairs, looking every inch the successful philanthropist in his custom tuxedo. He checked his watch, checked his phone, checked his reflection. Thomas stays here, he announced. Margot, you're coming with me. Margot's heart stopped. But Victor, he's only 6. We can't leave him alone. He won't be alone. Peterson and Miller will stay with him. He gestured to 2 of the guards, both large men with cold eyes. They'll make sure he stays out of trouble. Miller. The name meant nothing to her, just another anonymous enforcer in Victor's private army. Please let me stay with him. I can miss one gala. Absolutely not. Victor's voice went hard. You're coming. This is a $5 million event, and I need my beautiful wife by my side. Thomas will be fine. He grabbed her arm, started pulling her toward the door. Margot looked back at Tommy, her heart breaking at the fear in his eyes. Be good, baby, she called out. Mommy will be back soon. Mommy. Tommy started to cry, and one of the guards picked him up, restrained him as he struggled. And then Margot was in the limousine, the door closing, Victor beside her, radiating satisfaction. Through the tinted window, she watched her son's face disappear as the car pulled away. This wasn't the plan. The motorcycles were supposed to be a distraction while she and Tommy were rescued together. But Tommy was still in that house and she was being driven away, and she felt Victor's hand on her thigh, possessive and threatening. Smile, darling. Your public awaits. Margot smiled and began planning how she was going to burn his world down. At 6 p.m., exactly 167 Harley-Davidson motorcycles fired their engines in unison. The sound was apocalyptic, a roar that shook windows and set off car alarms for blocks in every direction. Marcus sat astride his Road King Grizz to his right, the presidents of 7 other charters flanking them. Behind them, arranged in perfect formation, wave after wave of brothers. They wore their colors with pride, black leather vests bearing their charter names, their road names, their patches earned through years of loyalty. And across every gas tank, every windshield, every available surface, they had placed a single black ribbon, the symbol of a funeral procession. Brothers, Marcus called out, his voice amplified by speakers mounted on several bikes. Today, we ride for those who cannot ride for themselves. We ride for the silent, the trapped, the afraid. We ride for justice outside the law, for mercy outside the system. We ride for Elena and for all those like her. He raised his fist. We are the lost saints, and we do not abandon our own. A roar of approval rose from the assembled men, engines revving in response. Roll out! They moved as one, a mechanical beast with 167 hearts beating in synchrony. Slow, deliberate, taking up both lanes of the highway. Police escorts appeared, lights flashing, trying to manage the chaos, but there was nothing illegal about a funeral procession. Nothing they could do but direct traffic and try to minimize disruption. The procession wound through downtown Riverside, past shopping districts and office buildings, past crowds of people who stopped to stare, to film on their phones to wonder what kind of funeral could command such an army. And then they reached the Riverside Grand Hotel, where Victor Blackwell's charity gala was just beginning in the lavish ballroom. The procession slowed even further, barely crawling past the building engines, growling like caged thunder. Inside the ballroom, champagne glasses clinked and string quartets played. Victor stood near the center, Margot on his arm, like an expensive accessory, accepting congratulations from other wealthy donors. Then someone noticed the sound. The rumble that was growing steadily louder, impossible to ignore. "What is that?" a woman in a $1,000 dress asked, frowning. The rumble became a roar. People moved toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the street, and a collective gasp went up. Motorcycles, dozens of them, hundreds of them. A rolling river of chrome and leather and barely contained menace, moving past the hotel in perfect formation. Black ribbons, fluttering engines, screaming defiance. Victor's face went pale, then red, then purple. "What the hell is this?" He grabbed a security guard's arm. "Get rid of them. Call the police." "Sir, it's a funeral procession. It's legal. Police are already there. They're just managing traffic." "I don't care. I want them gone." But the procession continued, relentless and unstoppable. Marcus led them past the hotel, 3 times a deliberate message. "We see you. We know who you are. We're watching." And then, as if on some unspoken signal, the procession split. The main body continued toward the highway, drawing police attention with them. But 8 bikes peeled off to taking a side street, their riders dressed in black, their faces covered. Grizz's extraction team heading for Silver Pine Ridge. At the Blackwell estate, 4 guards remained on duty. 2 patrolled the perimeter, 2 stayed inside with Tommy. They were bored complacent. This was an easy assignment. Watch a kid collect a paycheck, go home. They didn't notice the van that parked on the service road a quarter-mile away. Didn't see the shadows that detached from the darkness and approached the perimeter fence. Patch in the van typed rapidly on his laptop. "Cameras are looping. Motion sensors disabled. You have 8 minutes before the system does an auto-diagnostic and notices the hack." "Copy," Grizz whispered into his radio. He signaled to his team and they moved. The fence was 12 feet high with an electric current running through the top wire. But Patch had disowned that too. Grizz threw a rope ladder over, climbed, silently dropped into the manicured grounds on the other side. The rest of the team followed. They moved through the shadows, avoiding the exterior lights, heading for the service entrance on the east side. Patch had already unlocked it remotely. Grizz tested the handle and the door swung open silently. They were in. The interior of the house was obscene in its luxury. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art that probably cost more than most people's houses. Grizz felt disgust rise in his throat. All this wealth, and the man who owned it used it to cage and hurt his family. Hand signals. The team split into pairs, clearing rooms. Kitchen clear. Dining room clear. Living room clear. Then voices coming from the second floor. A child crying. A man's voice harsh. "Shut up, kid. Your old man said no noise." Grizz pointed. 3 men moved silently up the grand staircase while the rest secured the ground floor. They found the first guard in the hallway outside what appeared to be a child's bedroom. He was on his phone scrolling through social media, his weapon holstered. He never saw them coming. Diesel moved like smoke taser deployed, and the guard went down without a sound. 1 down. The second guard was actually in Tommy's room, standing by the door looking annoyed while the boy cried into his pillow. Grizz entered behind him, applied a chokehold he'd learned in the Marines, and the guard slumped unconscious. 2 down. Tommy looked up from his pillow, eyes wide with terror. Then he saw Grizz's face, and something like recognition flickered. "You're the nice man's friend," Tommy whispered. Grizz knelt beside the bed, his massive frame somehow gentle. "That's right, buddy. Your mama sent us to get you, but I need you to be very quiet and very brave, okay?" Tommy nodded, clutching his stuffed bear. "Good man." Grizz scooped him up, and Tommy wrapped his arms around his neck, small and trusting. "Status," Grizz whispered into his radio. "Ground floor secure. 2 guards neutralized. Second floor secure. Package acquired. Heading for extraction." They moved back down the stairs, Tommy quiet against Grizz's chest. The door was 20 feet away. Freedom was 20 feet away. Then the house's security system made a sound Patch hadn't anticipated, a soft chime indicating someone had triggered the manual override from a remote location. Every door in the house locked simultaneously with a heavy mechanical thunk. Shit, Patch's voice crackled with panic. Blackwell triggered lockdown from his phone. He knows you're there. I'm trying to override, but he's got admin access and I... How long to crack it? 3 minutes? Maybe 4. We don't have 4 minutes. Grizz looked at his team. Plan B, we breached the door. One of the men pulled out a small explosive charge, started setting it on the doorframe. Outside, they could hear sirens in the distance getting closer. Someone had called the police. At the gala, Victor stared at his phone in disbelief. The security app showed his house in lockdown, showed the guards unconscious on the floor, showed unfamiliar men in his home holding his son. His face contorted with rage. They're in my house. Those biker trash are in my house. He turned to Margot, and she saw murder in his eyes. What did you do? I don't know what you're talking about. His hand cracked across her face and she fell, the ballroom spinning. Around them, guests gasped, pulled out phones to record. Victor didn't care. He grabbed Margot by her hair, hauled her to her feet. You contacted them. Somehow you got a message to those animals. You're going to pay for this. I'm going to make you watch While you what, Victor? Margot's voice was steady despite the blood trickling from her split lip. Kill me like you killed my parents. Like you killed those other women. His grip loosened in shock and Margot took advantage. She drove her knee into his groin with every ounce of strength she possessed. Victor doubled over, gasping, and Margot ran. She kicked off her heels, hiked up her dress, and ran through the ballroom, through the lobby, out into the street where the tail end of the motorcycle procession was still passing. Help, she screamed. Please, my son. They have my son. The lead bike screeched to a halt. Marcus Kane pulled off his helmet, and their eyes met. The house, Margot gasped. Your men are trapped. He locked it down. You have to help them. Behind her, Victor exploded through the hotel doors, his face a mask of insane fury. He saw her standing with Marcus, and he pulled something from his jacket. A gun. Get away from my wife, he roared. Marcus didn't hesitate. He pushed Margot behind him, his massive frame a shield. Your wife? Marcus's voice was cold. You mean the woman you've been beating for 7 years? The woman whose parents you murdered. I don't know what lies she's told you. No lies, Victor, just truth. Marcus pulled out his phone, held it up. On the screen was a photo of Margot, bruised and bloody, taken from Blackwell's own servers. We have everything, every photo, every email, every piece of evidence of what you've done. Victor's hand shook, the gun wavering. You're dead. You're all dead. I'll have you arrested. I'll sue you into the ground. The sound of sirens filled the air. Police cars screeched into the plaza surrounding them. Officers poured out weapons drawn, shouting commands. And Marcus raised his hands slowly, peacefully. Beside him, Margot did the same. Officers, Marcus called out, this man just pulled a weapon on an unarmed woman. You might want to secure him first. The police moved, disarming a sputtering Victor. And in the chaos, Marcus whispered to Margot, your son is safe. My men have him. No matter what happens here, he's safe. Margot's knees buckled with relief, and Marcus caught her. At the estate, the explosive charge blew the door off its hinges with a controlled blast. Grizz and his team poured through. Tommy held tight against Grizz's chest. They ran for the waiting van where Patch had the engine running. Behind them, police cars were pulling into the driveway, officers shouting orders. But they made it. Barely impossibly, they made it into the van, and Patch floored it, taking a route he'd mapped out through service roads and back alleys that police vehicles would struggle to follow. In the back, Bones did a quick check on Tommy. You okay, buddy? Anything hurt? Tommy shook his head, then looked up at Grizz with solemn blue eyes. Where's my mommy? She's safe, Grizz promised, though he didn't know for sure. She's with our president. He's taking care of her. The nice man from the gas station. Yeah, kid, the nice man. Tommy hugged his bear and whispered, I knew he'd come. The Riverside Police Department's downtown precinct had never seen a night quite like this. The holding area was filled with men in leather vests, 67 arrested from the funeral procession on various charges ranging from disturbing the peace to conspiracy. They sat calmly, not resisting, not causing trouble, just waiting. Marcus Kane sat in an interrogation room, hands cuffed to the table facing Detective Sarah Morgan. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, clearly exhausted by the chaos the night had brought. Mr. Kane, she began, sliding a folder across the table. Do you have any idea how much trouble you're in? Some, Marcus said mildly. Breaking and entering, kidnapping, assault on security personnel, conspiracy. Detective. Marcus leaned forward as much as the cuffs would allow. Before you continue, I need you to look at something. In my wallet, there's a USB drive. Your tech people will want to see what's on it. Morgan raised an eyebrow. Is this some kind of game? No game. That drive contains evidence of money laundering, drug trafficking, domestic violence, and possibly murder, all committed by Victor Blackwell, the man whose house we supposedly broke into. The child we supposedly kidnapped is his son, who was being held in an abusive household. That's a serious accusation against a prominent businessman. It's a serious accusation backed by serious evidence. Marcus held her gaze. Check the drive, then decide who the real criminals are here. Morgan studied him for a long moment, then stood. Wait here. Not like I'm going anywhere, Marcus said dryly. Alone in the room, Marcus let himself breathe. Grizz had texted him before the police confiscated phones. Package delivered safe. Both packages. Both packages. Tommy and somehow Margot, too. Whatever happened to him now didn't matter. They'd succeeded. 3 rooms down, Margot sat wrapped in a blanket someone had given her. Her red gala dress torn and stained with blood from her split lip. A female officer had documented her injuries with photographs, noting each bruise, each mark with careful precision. Mrs. Blackwell, the officer said gently, can you tell me what happened tonight? Margot took a shaky breath. How much time do you have? She told them everything. 7 years of abuse condensed into an hour of testimony. The first time Victor hit her. The isolation from her friends and family. The escalating violence. Her parents' suspicious death. The birthday cake incident that had started this whole chain of events. I sent a message to the motorcycle club, she admitted. I didn't know what else to do. The police had already dismissed me once when I tried to report the abuse. Victor has connections, money, power. I needed help from people who weren't afraid of him. The officer's expression was carefully neutral, but Margot saw something flicker in her eyes, sympathy, understanding. And the bikers, they broke into your house to rescue your son. Yes, I was supposed to be there too, but Victor insisted I attend the gala. He left Tommy with guards who, her voice broke. He threatened to hurt Tommy if I didn't behave. He said he'd take him to the basement and teach him what happens to disobedient children. The officer put down her pen. Mrs. Blackwell, I need to be honest with you. What those men did tonight, breaking into a private residence, taking a child without legal authority, that's serious. But if what you're saying is true, if you can prove the abuse, I can prove it, Margot said fiercely. Victor documented everything. He kept photos, videos, files on his personal server. He thought it made him powerful having that control over me. But it's evidence. It's all evidence. In a secure conference room, Detective Morgan sat with her captain and 2 FBI agents who'd arrived within the hour, watching footage from Victor Blackwell's encrypted servers that Patch had copied to the USB drive. The room was silent except for the sound of the video playing. Margot being struck. Tommy cowering in a corner. Victor's cold voice giving orders to guards. And then the financial record shell companies, wire transfers, encrypted communications with known cartel operatives. Jesus Christ, one of the FBI agents whispered. How long has this been going on? Years, Morgan said quietly. Maybe decades, if the other women mentioned in these files are real. The captain rubbed his face. So what do we do about the bikers? The bikers, Morgan said slowly, committed crimes. But they committed them in the service of rescuing a woman and child from a documented abuser who is also apparently a major player in international drug trafficking and money laundering. She looked at her superior. We prosecute Blackwell, the bikers. I think we can work something out. The FBI agent nodded. We want Blackwell. We want his network. If that means cutting deals with some motorcycle club members who happen to do our job for us, I can live with that. In the holding cell, Marcus sat with Grizz Bones and the core members of his team. Around them, brothers from other charters dozed on benches or played cards with a deck someone had smuggled in. Think they'll charge us? Bones asked. Probably, Marcus said. Question is what they'll charge us with and whether it'll stick. Was it worth it? This from a younger brother, a prospect named Jimmy, who'd been on the funeral procession. Marcus thought about Tommy's tear-streaked face at the gas station, Margot's terrified eyes, the photo of Elena on his nightstand. Yeah, he said quietly. It was worth it. The cell door clanked open. Detective Morgan stood there flanked by two uniforms. Marcus Kane, you're being released on your own recognizance. You'll need to appear for a hearing next week, but for now you're free to go. Marcus stood slowly, not quite believing. And my brothers? Most of them are being released. Minor charges, mostly traffic violations from the procession. The extraction team, she paused. That's more complicated. But the FBI wants to talk to all of you about Victor Blackwell's criminal enterprise. Cooperate with that, and I imagine most charges will be reduced or dropped. And Margot Tommy. The boy is in protective custody being evaluated by Child Services. Mrs. Blackwell is giving her statement. They're both safe. Marcus felt tension he had been carrying for days finally release. Can I see the mom? Eventually, right now let's get you processed out. It was 3 in the morning when Marcus finally stepped out of the police station into the cool night air. A dozen brothers were waiting, including Grizz and Bones, all recently released. Their bikes were an impound, but someone had arranged rides. Where's the kid? Marcus asked immediately. Clubhouse, Grizz rumbled. Child Services agreed to temporary placement with us after Bones explained the situation. They got a court order for emergency custody away from Blackwell. The boy's with 2 of the old ladies right now getting fed and cleaned up. And Margot, still at the station. Lawyers are with her. Bones pulled out his phone, showed Marcus a text from one of the domestic violence advocates they'd contacted. She's filing for divorce and a restraining order. With the evidence we provided, it's going to be airtight. Marcus nodded, allowed himself a small smile. We did it. We did, Grizz agreed. Now comes the hard part. What's that? Keeping them safe while Blackwell's lawyers try to tear everything apart. Victor Blackwell sat in his own interrogation room, expensive lawyer at his side, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. The FBI agents across from him were unimpressed by his bluster. Mr. Blackwell, we have emails linking you to the Sinaloa cartel, Agent Martinez said calmly. We have financial records showing you laundered over $50 million in the past 3 years. We have communications discussing drug shipments, and we have evidence you hired someone to tamper with your in-laws' vehicle, resulting in their deaths. All fabricated, Victor's lawyer interjected. Clearly planted by these biker criminals. The files came from your personal server, Mr. Blackwell, files you encrypted and password protected. Files you thought no one could access. Agent Martinez slid a photo across the table. We also have this. Care to explain? It was one of the photos from the insurance folder. Margot beaten and bloodied, taken 5 years ago. Victor's face went pale, then red. That's private property. That's evidence of domestic violence. We have hundreds more just like it, all time-stamped, all documented. You kept them as leverage over your wife. Now they're evidence that's going to put you away for a very long time. The lawyer leaned in, whispered urgently to Victor. Marcus, watching through the one-way glass with Detective Morgan, couldn't hear the words, but could read the body language. The lawyer was telling him to take a deal. Victor shook his head violently. No, I want my son returned immediately. I want those bikers arrested for kidnapping. I want my wife charged with conspiracy. I want... Mr. Blackwell, Agent Martinez interrupted. You're not in a position to want anything. You're under arrest for money laundering, drug trafficking, conspiracy, and we're investigating you for 2 counts of murder. Your wife has filed for divorce and sole custody. Your son is in protective custody. Your assets are being frozen as we speak. So you can either cooperate with this investigation and possibly see daylight before you're 80, or you can keep making demands and spend the rest of your life in a federal prison. Your choice, Mom. Victor stared at them, the reality of his situation finally penetrating his narcissistic certainty. For the first time in perhaps his entire adult life, he had no power, no control, no leverage. He looked exactly like what he was, a pathetic, broken man who'd built his identity on hurting people weaker than himself. I want a deal, he whispered. Dawn broke over the Lost Saints clubhouse, painting the industrial buildings in shades of gold and pink. Inside, in one of the back rooms that had been hastily converted into a temporary bedroom, Tommy Ashford slept in a real bed for the first time in his life that wasn't in his father's house. He was curled around his stuffed bear, his face peaceful in sleep. Two women sat nearby, taking turns watching over him. Grizz's wife Maria and Bones's partner Jackie. Both had experience with traumatized children, both understood the importance of safe, gentle presence. When Tommy woke, he didn't cry or panic. He sat up slowly, looked around at the unfamiliar room, and asked quietly, "Where's my mom?" "She's still talking to the police, sweetheart," Maria said gently. "But she'll be here soon. Are you hungry?" Tommy nodded. They led him to the clubhouse kitchen, which had been scrubbed cleaner than it had been in years. Someone had gone shopping and bought actual kid food, cereal, milk, fruit. Tommy sat at the big table, swinging his feet that didn't quite reach the floor, and ate while tough bikers tiptoed around him like he was made of glass. Patch appeared looking like he hadn't slept in days, carrying a laptop. "Hey, little man, you like video games." Tommy's eyes lit up, and Patch set him up with a game, something age-appropriate and colorful. Around them, brothers came and went, each one stopping to check on the kid to make sure he had what he needed. This was what the club was for, Marcus thought, watching from the doorway. Not the bikes or the brotherhood or even the freedom of the road. It was for this, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. At 8 a.m., a car pulled up to the clubhouse. Margot stepped out, still wearing the torn red dress, looking exhausted and fragile, and somehow stronger than she had ever been. Marcus met her at the door. For a moment, they just looked at each other. These two people brought together by tragedy and trauma, and a desperate message about a chocolate cake. "Thank you," Margot said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for seeing us, for believing me, for risking everything." "Where's Tommy?" she interrupted herself, looking past him into the clubhouse. "Kitchen, playing video games. He's safe, Margot. He's okay." She pushed past him, not roughly, but with the determination of a mother who'd been separated from her child for too long. Marcus followed, watched as she burst into the kitchen. "Mommy!" Tommy launched himself from his chair, ran into her arms. Margot collapsed to her knees, holding him, both of them crying. Around them, hardened bikers suddenly found reasons to look away, to wipe their eyes, to clear their throats. "I'm sorry, baby," Margot sobbed. "I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you better." "It's okay, Mommy," Tommy said into her shoulder. "The nice men saved us. We're safe now." Maria brought Margot a chair, some coffee, a box of tissues. Slowly the story came out. Victor had been arrested. The FBI had enough evidence to charge him with multiple federal crimes. The DA was pursuing charges for domestic violence and the suspicious deaths of Margot's parents. "But the hearing for emergency custody is Monday," Margot said, holding Tommy in her lap like she'd never let go. "Victor's lawyers will fight it. They'll say I'm an unfit mother, that I orchestrated all of this, that—" "You have lawyers too," Bones reminded her gently. "Good ones, pro bono, and you have evidence. Years of documentation that you were abused." "And you have us," Marcus added. "Character witnesses, people who will testify to what we saw, what we found." Margot looked up at him, this massive tattooed man who'd turned her desperate message into a military operation. Why did you do all this for people you don't even know?" Marcus pulled out his wallet, showed her the faded photo of Elena. 20 years ago, I got a call from my sister. She was crying, terrified, begging me to come help her. I went as fast as I could." His voice went rough. "But I was too late. Her husband had beaten her so badly, so systematically, that when I got there, she was already gone. Jumped from a 12th floor balcony to escape him." Margot's hand went to her mouth. "I couldn't save Elena. The system failed her. I failed her, and she died. Her husband walked away clean, no charges, no consequences. Just moved to a new city and probably found a new victim." Marcus looked at Tommy, then back at Margot. "When I saw your son crying about that birthday cake, when I saw the fear in your eyes, I saw my sister. And I promised myself a long time ago, I would never be too late again." Margot stood still, holding Tommy, and did something that surprised everyone in the room. She hugged Marcus, this stranger who had saved her life, and whispered, "She'd be proud of you, Elena. She'd be so proud." Marcus's arms came up slowly, carefully returning the embrace. "I hope so." he said quietly. I really hope so. The days that followed were a blur of legal proceedings, media circus, and slow, careful healing. The story broke in the news, wealthy CEO arrested on federal charges, motorcycle club, heroes, or vigilantes, depending on which channel you watch, dramatic rescue from abusive household. Marcus gave exactly one interview to a local reporter who'd covered the story fairly. He kept it simple. We protect our own. Mrs. Ashford reached out for help. We provided it. Everything else is just noise. The hearing for emergency custody was Monday as promised. Margot sat in family court, her lawyer beside her, while Victor appeared via video conference from jail, his legal team making impassioned arguments about parental rights and due process. But the judge, a woman in her 60s who'd spent 30 years seeing abused families, looked at the evidence, looked at the photos, the medical reports, the testimony from police and FBI, looked at the small boy sitting quietly beside his mother holding her hand. Mr. Blackwell, she said, her voice like steel, in my years on this bench, I have seen many cases of domestic violence, but I have rarely seen such systematic, documented cruelty. You not only abused your wife physically and emotionally, you created an archive of that abuse. You used it to control her, to terrorize her, to ensure her compliance. Victor started to speak, but the judge held up her hand. I am granting Mrs. Ashford full emergency custody of the minor child. I am issuing a restraining order prohibiting you from any contact with either Mrs. Ashford or the child, and I am referring this case to the DA's office for criminal prosecution. This court is adjourned. Margot sagged with relief, pulled Tommy close. Behind her in the gallery, Marcus and a dozen Lost Saints brothers sat in solidarity. They'd taken the day off work, ridden their bikes to the courthouse, and packed the room in their leather vests. A show of support, a warning to anyone who might think Margot was alone in this fight. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Margot's lawyer handled them, while Marcus and the brothers formed a protective barrier, getting Margot and Tommy safely to a waiting car. Where do we go now? Margot asked Marcus through the window. Wherever you want, he said, and you're free now. You get to choose. For the first time in 7 years, Margot Ashford smiled, a real smile. I think we'll stay at the clubhouse a little while longer, if that's okay, just until I figure out what comes next. You're family now, Marcus said simply. Stay as long as you need. 3 weeks later, Victor Blackwell's world had completely collapsed. His company's board had forced him out. His assets remained frozen pending the outcome of multiple investigations. His high society friends had abandoned him with the speed of rats fleeing a sinking ship, and the evidence kept mounting. FBI investigators, following leads from Patch's data dump, had uncovered a network of abuse and corruption spanning 2 decades. They found 3 women who'd received settlements from Blackwell in exchange for silence. They found the mechanic who tampered with the Ashford's car, now willing to testify in exchange for immunity. Most damning, they found Bradford Hayes. Elena's widower had been living in San Francisco under a new name, married to a woman who bore a disturbing resemblance to Elena. When FBI agents showed up at his door with questions about his fraternity, brother Victor Blackwell, that marriage ended in less than 24 hours. His wife filed for divorce and a restraining order citing abuse. The pattern was undeniable now. These men, these predators, who'd bonded in college over toxic masculinity and entitlement, had spent decades hurting women with impunity. Until they hadn't. Marcus got the call from Agent Martinez on a Tuesday evening. We're bringing Hayes in for questioning. Thought you'd want to know. Your sister's case is being reopened as a suspicious death. Marcus sat down slowly, the phone pressed to his ear. After 20 years, evidence is evidence. Between what we found in Blackwell's files and Hayes' pattern of behavior, there's enough to warrant a new investigation. I can't promise anything, Mr. Kane, but I can promise we'll look at it with fresh eyes. That's all I ever wanted, Marcus said quietly. Just someone to look, to see what really happened. After he hung up, Marcus walked out to where Elena's photo sat on his bike's gas tank. He'd kept it there since the rescue, a reminder of why they'd done what they'd done. They're looking, Ellie, he whispered. Finally, someone's looking. 6 months after the rescue, Margot stood in front of a small commercial space in downtown Riverside holding a key. The space had once been a coffee shop, but it had good bones, good light, and potential. What do you think? She asked Tommy, who stood beside her holding a new stuffed animal, a gift from Grizz. It's big, Tommy observed. It's going to be an art studio, Margot explained. A place where I can teach again. A place where people who've been through hard things can come and make beautiful things. She'd spent the past months in therapy working through trauma, learning to trust again. The divorce from Victor had been finalized with remarkable speed once he'd decided to cooperate with federal prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. He'd get 30 years minimum, and with his history of violence probably wouldn't survive to parole. Margot had been awarded the house on Silver Pine Ridge in the settlement, but she'd sold it immediately. Couldn't bear to spend another night in that glass prison. Instead, she'd bought a modest house in a good neighborhood with good schools, and she'd saved the rest for Tommy's future and for this dream. An art studio, a place of healing and creation. She'd already chosen the name Elena's Arts, a tribute to the woman whose death had set in motion the chain of events that saved Margot's life. Marcus had cried when she told him, actually cried this tough biker president, tears running down his weathered face. She would have loved that, he'd said. She would have loved you. Now Margot unlocked the door and stepped inside Tommy's hand in hers. The space was empty, echoing full of possibility. When will it open? Tommy asked. Few months. I need to fix it up, buy supplies, hire some help. She knelt down to his level. But I was thinking maybe you could help me. Maybe you could be my assistant. Tommy's face lit up. Really? Really, you're good at art, and you're brave, and I'm going to need both those things. They explored the space together, Tommy running from room to room, imagining where things would go. Margot followed more slowly, her mind already filling the empty walls with color and life and hope. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Grand opening day we ride. 167 bikes. Free advertising. You in? She typed back, I'm in. 1 year after the rescue, on a sunny Saturday in June, Elena's Arts held its grand opening. The street was blocked off, filled with motorcycles parked in neat rows. 167 of them, their chrome gleaming in the sun, black ribbons fluttering from handlebars. Not a funeral procession this time, a celebration. Inside the studio walls displayed art from Margot's students, survivors of domestic violence, recovering addicts, at-risk youth. The pieces ranged from amateur to stunning, but each one told a story of transformation, of healing, of finding beauty after trauma. Tommy, now 7, ran through the crowd in a miniature Lost Saints vest that Grizz had made for him, showing people his own artwork, a painting of motorcycles with angel wings. Margot stood near the entrance, greeting visitors, accepting congratulations. She wore a simple blue dress, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders, and she smiled easily now. Real smiles, not the painted-on masks from her old life. Marcus arrived last, as presidents often do, his Road King rumbling to a stop at the curb. He'd brought a gift, a framed photo of Elena at 17, laughing at the camera, full of life. For your wall, he said, handing it to Margot. Every student who comes here, they'll see her. They'll know her story. They'll know they're not alone. Margot hung the photo in the place of honor, right behind her desk, where she'd see it every day. Beneath it, she placed a small plaque, Elena Kane, 1979 to 1999. Your light continues to shine. The party lasted into the evening. Children ran around, supervised by old ladies, bikers ate cake and drank non-alcoholic punch, and Margot gave tours of the studio to anyone interested. At one point, she found herself standing beside Marcus, both of them watching Tommy play with some other kids, carefree and laughing. He doesn't have nightmares anymore, Margot said quietly. He used to wake up screaming 3-4 times a night. Now he sleeps through. Kids are resilient, Marcus observed. So are adults, with the right help. She looked at him. You gave us that help. You gave us our lives back. You gave yourself your life back, Marcus corrected. You're the one who sent that message. You're the one who chose to fight. We just provided backup. Margot laughed. Is that what you call 167 motorcycles and a military-style extraction backup? Well, when you put it that way, Marcus grinned. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Margot said, I heard Bradford Hayes pleaded guilty to Elena's murder. Marcus nodded, his expression sobering. 20 years to life. He'll die in prison. Won't bring her back, but... He trailed off. But it's something, Margot finished. It's justice. It's closure. Yeah. Marcus pulled out his wallet, looked at Elena's photo one more time. I used to carry this with me every day, Look at it every morning, every night. Couldn't let go, but I think maybe it's time. Time for what? Time to let her rest. Time to stop carrying this weight and start being grateful. Grateful I had her for 19 years. Grateful she led me to you and Tommy. Grateful that her death meant something changed, something saved someone. Margot put her hand on his arm. You can do both, you know. Remember her and move forward. Honor her and live your life. They're not mutually exclusive. Marcus looked at her, this woman who'd been broken and remade, who'd survived hell and come out stronger. When did you get so wise? Thursdays at 3, therapy. Highly recommend it. She smiled. You should try it sometime. Might help with the weight you carry around. Bikers don't do therapy. This biker saved my life. I think he can handle 50 minutes of talking about his feelings. Marcus laughed a real laugh, surprised out of him. You're trouble, you know that. I learned from the best. As the sun set over Riverside, the party began to wind down. Brothers climbed on their bikes' engines, rumbling to life one by one. They formed up, preparing to ride back to the clubhouse, back to their lives. But before they left, they did something that had become tradition at the end of Lost Saints events. They revved their engines 3 times in unison, a thunderous salute that rattled windows and set off car alarms. For Elena, for Margot, for Tommy, for every survivor who'd found their way to freedom, for the ones who made it out. 2 years after the rescue, Marcus got a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Kane, a woman's voice young, uncertain. My name is Rebecca, Rebecca Hayes. I found your name in old records about my mother, Elena Kane. She was my mother. Marcus's world tilted. I'm sorry, what? Lena Kane, she died when I was 3 months old. I never knew her, but I've been trying to find out about her, and I found your name. You testified at the inquest into her death. Marcus sat down heavily. Elena had a daughter who was now, 20 years old. A daughter Bradford Hayes had raised and probably poisoned against Elena's memory. She was my sister, Marcus said quietly. Your mother was my little sister. Silence on the other end. Then, oh God, I didn't know. The records are so confusing. Can you tell me about her? Please, no one talks about her. But I need to know. I need to know who she was. Where are you? He asked. San Francisco. Give me your address. I'm coming to see you. 3 days later, Marcus rode north to San Francisco, Grizz and Bones accompanying him. They found Rebecca in a small apartment near the university where she was studying art therapy, a coincidence that made Marcus's chest tight. She looked like Elena. Same dark eyes, same smile, same creative spirit that manifested in the paintings covering every wall of her tiny studio. They talked for hours. Marcus told her everything. Elena's kindness, her laughter, her dreams of being an artist. The way she'd protected him when they were kids, always his fiercest defender. The call she'd made that last night. He told her about Bradford Hayes' arrest, his confession, his guilty plea, told her the truth that her father was a murderer who'd gotten away with it for 20 years before finally facing justice. Rebecca cried, but she also smiled. I always knew something was wrong. The way Dad talked about her, it never felt real. He made her sound like a china doll that broke, not a person. She looked at Marcus with Elena's eyes. Thank you for telling me the truth. You should know, Marcus said carefully, that your mother's legacy lives on. There's an art studio in Riverside called Elena's Arts. It helps survivors of domestic violence heal through creativity. Your mother would have loved it. Can I visit? I think Margot would like that very much. 5 years after the rescue, Tommy Ashford turned 11. The birthday party was at the clubhouse, a tradition now with bikers and their families filling the yard, a massive chocolate cake with blue frosting as the centerpiece. Tommy had grown into a confident kid, smart and funny, with no memory of his father except as a distant nightmare that therapy had helped him process and release. He was in the 6th grade now, captain of his soccer team, and already talking about being an art teacher like his mom when he grew up. Or maybe a biker, he'd said recently, which had made all the brothers laugh and Margot roll her eyes. Marcus sat at his usual spot, watching the celebration, feeling content in a way he'd never quite experienced before. The club was strong, his brothers were healthy, and the family they'd rescued had become truly part of their family. Margot appeared beside him, carrying 2 beers. She handed him one and sat down. He wants a motorcycle when he turns 16, she said. Absolutely not, Marcus replied immediately. That's what I said. Then he pointed out that you ride Grizz rides, everyone he admires rides. She took a sip of her beer. Hard to argue against role models. Tell him he has to wait until 18 and take a safety course and wear a helmet. You don't wear a helmet. Do as I say, not as I do. Margot laughed that free, unguarded laugh that had taken years to fully emerge. He's going to do it anyway, you know. Just like he's going to get that tattoo he wants. What tattoo? A reaper with angel wings, like yours but with the wings. He sketched it last week, showed it to Patch. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Kid's got good taste. They sat in comfortable silence watching Tommy open presents surrounded by love and safety and a future full of possibilities. I never thanked you properly, Margot said quietly. You've thanked me about 1,000 times. Not for this, not for, she gestured at the scene before them. Not just for rescuing us, but for giving us this, a family, a home, a place where Tommy can grow up knowing what good men look like. We're not all good, Marcus protested. No, Margot agreed. But you're good enough. You're loyal, brave, protective. You keep your promises. You stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. She looked at him. You're the kind of man I want my son to become. Marcus didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded, blinking back the unexpected sting of tears. Across the yard, Rebecca was helping set up the cake, chatting with Elena's old friends from the club, who'd adopted her into the family as enthusiastically as they'd adopted Margot and Tommy. She visited once a month now, studying under Margot's guidance, learning the family trade of healing through art. Elena's daughter and Elena's legacy intertwined in ways that felt like cosmic justice. The cake was lit, 11 candles blazing. Everyone sang happy birthday, rough voices and sweet voices blending together. Tommy closed his eyes, made his wish, and blew them all out in one breath. Later, when Marcus asked what he'd wished for, Tommy just grinned. Can't tell, or it won't come true. But Marcus suspected he knew. The same thing every kid who'd ever known fear wished for: more days like this. More laughter, more safety, more love. More life lived in the light instead of the darkness. 10 years after the rescue, on a warm June evening, Marcus Kane stood in front of a grave he hadn't visited in years. He'd finally taken Margot's advice, gone to therapy, worked through the guilt and grief that had shaped so much of his life. He'd learned it was okay to let go, to remember without being haunted, to honor without being consumed. Hey, Ellie, he said to the headstone. Sorry it's been a while. Been busy. He told her about Rebecca, about how her daughter was thriving, about to graduate with a degree in art therapy. Told her about Margot's studio, which now had 3 locations and helped hundreds of survivors every year. Told her about Tommy, who'd just gotten his learner's permit and was already saving up for his first bike. You'd like them, he said. Margot's got your strength. Rebecca's got your creativity. Tommy's got your heart. He placed fresh flowers on the grave white lilies, Elena's favorite. I kept my promise, sis. We've helped a lot of people over the years. Set up a whole network, actually. Shelters, legal aid, therapy services, all funded by the club. We call it Elena's Light. He smiled. Cheesy, I know. You'd hate it, but it fits. A breeze rustled the trees, warm and gentle. Marcus took it as approval. I'm okay now, he said quietly. It took a long time, but I'm okay. And I think you'd be proud of the man I became. Not perfect, not even close, but trying. Always trying to be better, to do better, to help more. He stood there a while longer, just being present, remembering the good times instead of the tragic end. Elena teaching him to draw when they were kids. Elena defending him from bullies. Elena laughing at his terrible jokes. Elena alive, not just Elena lost. When he finally walked back to his bike, he felt lighter, freer. The weight he'd carried for 20 years had finally gently lifted. He started his engine, but before he rode away, he looked back one more time at the headstone. Rest easy, little sister. I've got it from here. 15 years after the rescue, Margot Ashford stood in front of a crowd of 200 people at a domestic violence awareness conference. She was 50 now. Her auburn hair streaked with distinguished gray. Her face marked by time, but beautiful in the way that resilient people are beautiful. My name is Margot, she began, her voice steady and strong. And 15 years ago I was dying. Not physically, although that was certainly a possibility, But spiritually, emotionally, I was being erased one day at a time by a man who claimed to love me. She told her story, the whole story, holding nothing back. The abuse, the isolation, the fear, her parents' deaths, the gas station where everything changed. The message she sent to a motorcycle club in a desperate bid for help. I was saved by a group of men society often dismisses as criminals or troublemakers. But they were heroes. They risked everything, their freedom, their safety, their lives to rescue me and my son. They didn't know us. They owed us nothing. But they came anyway. Marcus sat in the audience uncomfortable in a button-down shirt instead of his usual leather, but there because Margot had asked. Beside him sat Tommy, now 21, studying social work in college. On his other side, Rebecca, now a practicing art therapist working at one of Elena's arts locations. 3 generations of healing, all connected by one tragic death and one desperate rescue. I tell you this, Margot continued, not to glorify vigilante justice, but to illustrate a simple truth. Sometimes the system fails. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us can't or won't. And in those moments, we need communities that care enough to act. She paused, looked directly at Marcus. My son's birthday cake was chocolate with blue frosting. It was thrown away because it didn't matter, because he didn't matter, because I didn't matter. But to the man who heard that story, it mattered enough to change everything. Pay attention to the small things, she said to the crowd. The bruises someone tries to hide, the fear in their eyes, the child crying over something that seems trivial, but isn't. Those are the signals. Those are the cries for help. And if you see them, if you hear them, I'm begging you, respond. You don't have to be a biker or a hero or anyone special. You just have to care enough to act. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, people lined up to talk to her, to share their own stories, to ask for advice. Marcus waited patiently, talking with Tommy about his classes, listening to Rebecca describe her latest project. When the crowd finally thinned, Margot found him. Thank you for coming. I know these things aren't your style. Wouldn't have missed it, Marcus said. You were incredible up there. I learned from watching you. The way you stood up at that trial 15 years ago and told the judge exactly what you thought of Victor Blackwell's Warriors. No fear, just truth. Marcus laughed. Yeah, well, contempt of court charges were totally worth it. They were, Margot agreed. She linked her arm through his, comfortable and familiar. 15 years had made them family in a way that transcended traditional definitions. Not romantic, never that, but bonded by shared trauma and triumph. Walk me out, she asked. They walked through the conference center, Tommy and Rebecca following behind, chatting about art and therapy and the future. Outside, the California sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In the parking lot, Marcus's bike waited still. His preferred mode of transportation, even as his hair went gray and his body collected the aches of age and hard living. You still riding? Margot asked, though she knew the answer. Until they pry the handlebars from my cold, dead hands. Good. Don't change. The world needs people like you. People who don't walk away when things get hard. People who keep their promises. I learned from the best, Marcus said, echoing words she'd once said to him. Tommy and Rebecca caught up, and the 4 of them stood there for a moment, an unlikely family formed in fire and trauma and love. Dinner, Rebecca suggested. There's a great Italian place down the street. They went, the 4 of them, and over pasta and wine and laughter they told stories. About Elena, about the rescue, about the 15 years of life and growth and healing that had followed. About second chances and found families, and the way broken things, when mended with care, often became stronger than they were before. And later, much later, when Marcus rode back to Riverside under a sky full of stars, he thought about all of it. The tragedy that had shaped him, the promise he'd made, the lives he'd changed, and the lives that had changed him. He thought about Elena finally at rest. He thought about Margot and Tommy thriving. He thought about Rebecca carrying her mother's legacy forward in ways Elena never could have imagined. And he thought, this is enough. This is more than enough. This is everything. 20 years after the rescue, a young woman walked into Elena's art's main location in Riverside. She was 23, bruised around the wrists, fear in her eyes. She carried a small child, maybe 2 years old. The receptionist looked up, saw the signs, and immediately pressed a button under the desk. Margot, now 55 and semi-retired but still active in the organization, appeared within minutes. "Can I help you?" she asked gently. The woman's voice shook. I, I saw your website. It said you help people. People like me." "We do. Come sit. You're safe here." They sat. The woman told her story haltingly at first, then faster as the dam broke. An abusive boyfriend, nowhere to go, family estranged, system unresponsive. Margot listened as she'd listened to hundreds of similar stories over the years. When the woman finished, Margot pulled out her phone, made a call. "Marcus, I have someone who needs help, the full protocol." 20 minutes later, 3 motorcycles pulled up outside. The riders, all wearing Lost Saints vests, entered the studio. The lead rider pulled off his helmet. It was Tommy Ashford, now 26, carrying on the tradition. He crouched down to the little child's level, his voice gentle. "Hey there, sweetheart. What's your name?" The child whispered something too quiet to hear. Tommy smiled, patient and kind, everything he'd learned from the men who'd saved him. "It's okay to be scared, but you don't have to be scared anymore. We're going to help. That's what we do." Behind him, in a frame on the wall, Elena Kane smiled out from her photo, eternal and young. Her light continued to shine, and somewhere in the place where broken things go to heal, a man named Marcus Kane, who'd kept his promise, felt his sister's hand on his shoulder one last time, heard her voice whisper in the wind, "Thank you, big brother. Thank you for seeing. Thank you for caring. Thank you for never giving up. Thank you for saving them all."